Welcome back to We're at the Age. Today's topic is one that's often misunderstood, sometimes feared, and yet deeply important: hospice care. Many people think hospice means giving up, but in reality, it's about comfort, dignity, and support in one of life's most vulnerable chapters. Our guest today, Mike George, has over 20 years of experience in hospice care and is here to help us shift how we think about it. Whether you're caring for someone now or simply planning ahead, this conversation will help you to understand what hospice really offers, not just for your loved one, but for you too.
So I've got to tell you a story about the way that I actually truly found my way to voice.
Okay.
So several years ago, my best friend's father had had a stroke. And then he had another stroke and another stroke. And he was in a rehab hospital up in Wisconsin. And Medicare said, all right, time to go. So they sent him to a nursing home where he immediately had another stroke. They were actually in a small town hospital because, of course, nursing home system, they kept getting further and further and further out of the actual city. And they were in a rural hospital, and the attending doctor at the time sat my best friend down and said, this is kind of the end, where he's not going to continue getting better. This is going to continue happening, and it's going to be rough. Which is a hard thing for a family member to hear. Mm-hmm. And he said, I really suggest that you consider hospice at this time, which, of course, my best friend was like, absolutely not. This is my dad. I don't want to give up on him. I can't manage that right now. Pretty quickly, she had some conversations with folks who said, no, this is better for him. And, she decided that to look for hospice, and actually was able to find him a hospice home up there, which was beautiful. And maybe she says now one of the best things she could have ever done for him. He had a beautiful time there, really dignified. And I would say that her experience with nursing homes, her experience with hospice, radicalized me towards this work at Voice more and more. So that was the age that I learned I needed to know more about hospice. And so here we are today with an expert, Mike George, who has been in the hospice world for 20 years.
Probably 25.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
so we got an expert.
Yeah.
It's been a quarter of a century. It's hard to believe.
Wow. So the question that we always start our shows up with is, who in your life are you caring?
I would say first and foremost, I'm not always the best at this. I try to take care of myself. Not only for the work I do, I need to keep myself healthy and well to give to the people professionally that I need to give to. But of course, my two boys who are 11 and 9 are focal points of my life. My wife, my parents, my dad has Parkinson's. He's at the earlier stages, but I know where the journey, may head. And so I'm really trying to focus a lot of energy on that situation. But honestly, I feel like hospice has helped me understand that caring for others can take on many different forms, and it's a gift to connect with people on that level.
So how'd you get pulled into the field?
So when I graduated from WashU with my master's degree in social work, I worked at nursing homes in the area. And in about a 2-year span, I worked at 3 or 4, kept getting better offers to go there. Ended up working as the director of social services for a local nursing home, and I got to see firsthand the work that hospice companies did in our building. I got to hear from the families, from the patients themselves about all the benefits that hospice provided them. And one of the marketers of one of the companies who was in our building asked me if I was interested in doing some extra work for them. Their social worker was ill and had to take a leave of absence. And I was in my 20s. I was paying off student loans. So I'm like, extra work, extra money, let's do it. So I did some visits and quickly fell in love with everything about hospice. It was really a transformative experience for me. And as the company grew, I was able to quickly move into a more full-time role with them. And I was there for almost 25 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. It's nice to be with one company for a very long time. You really get to know it well.
Yes, yeah, and I grew up with a lot of amazing people in different disciplines at that company, so it was a great experience.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And one thing that we talked about before is how a lot of people have a misconception about hospice. So what are some of the misconceptions that people come into hospice having?
We could talk for 2 hours about that
Yeah.
that question. The first thing I want to say is everybody thinks that hospice is about death and dying. It's actually about life and living.
Love that.
You need to meet criteria to be eligible for hospice. And one of those criteria is a prognosis based on your diagnosis or comorbidities of 6 months or less. So yes, that is part of the hospice benefit qualification. But beyond that, everything we do is about life and living. It's about quality of life. It's about pain and symptom management. It's about, connecting you with what's important to you at that point in your life. It's about support to your family. Just so many things about it. So that's the first misconception. Is it's not we're giving up. It's not we've done everything else we could do. We're going to hasten this process. It's about making a choice for your care to take some power control back in your life and focus on what's important. The medications we use don't hasten the process. A lot of times people think that, they're going to give dad morphine. That means he's going to quickly die. What the comfort medications do is they relax the body, which may be transitioning, and that can be a distressful experience for the body and for family members to see. So what the comfort meds do is help ease that distress and sometimes allow the body to do what it's naturally trying to do already in a more comfortable, peaceful manner. So yes, people die after receiving comfort meds, but not because of the comfort meds. It's because their body was already in that process, in that state, and the comfort meds just allowed it to be more relaxed and peaceful for not only the patient, but for the family.
And I know in my best friend's situation, her dad actually had some improvement after moving into hospice, and I think taking off some of the meds that were keeping him alive, but causing just really hardship on the body.
Medications, especially, heavy duty ones, so to speak, have side effects. And while there's significant benefits to medications, at a point in your life where they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing from a quality of life standpoint, it can actually make you feel worse. And sometimes by eliminating those meds and introducing meds that do focus on pain and symptom management, quality of life, any depression or anxiety, you feel better and you live longer. By no means am I saying that, you bring hospice on board, you're absolutely going to feel better. You're going to live longer. No, I mean, when the body, mind, and spirit are ready and it's the right time, then death will occur. But even in those instances where we get a referral and somebody only has 48 hours on service with us, we can do a lot of good work in that situation as well. We can help manage their pain, manage their symptoms, support the family in kind of that crisis moment, and then follow up with bereavement support. But the best outcomes we have are when we get referrals and people elect hospice sooner rather than later. That's when we have the best outcomes, the best chance to really make a meaningful difference in the patient's life and their family's life. And that's oftentimes when you see people outlive their prognosis.
Absolutely. So on the podcast, we talk a lot about caregivers and the struggles that you're having with working with your loved one, especially your older adult loved ones. And one of the things that I think is really important that we do here is the long-term care ombudsman program. And that's part of a federal program that helps people who live in long-term care. So here in Missouri, that's nursing homes, that's assisted living facilities, that's residential care facilities, and helps those folks make sure that their rights inside those facilities are being upheld and helps them mediate issues that they might be having at a facility. So if you or your loved one are living in a long-term care community and having problems, Calling Voices Ombudsman Program is the perfect right step. And you can do that by calling 314-918-8222. I know that a lot of people think hospice means giving up. I can't count how many times I've had somebody say, this person's going on to hospice, and then they're gone pretty quickly. How do you respond to that belief when you get that from folks?
Again, in our medical system, right or wrong, fair or unfair. We are focused on treatment and cure, and let's do this and let's try this, and that's okay. Believe me, we have a great medical system, and at times in our life, that's what we need. There's a lot of advanced medical procedures out there that people can and should pursue at different points in their life. But here's what I often tell people who are kind of, weighing their options. When you think about how you want to spend your last days, weeks, months, even years, because our last chapter of our life story is not just days, it can be years. Do you want to be in your environment of choice, i.e. your home or your community that you've been living at for a long time? Usually the answer is yes. Do you want to be comfortable physically? Do you want to have your symptoms managed? Yes. Do you want to be with your loved ones, as close to either living with them or in connection with them as much as you can? Yes. Do you want to have the equipment you need? Do you want to have the supplies you need? Do you want to be on the right medications? Not anything unnecessary, not too much, but not too little, just the right amount for what's important to you. The answer is yes. Do you want to be connected to your church or your, faith preference or your spiritual connection? Usually yes. Do you want to have emotional support, grief counseling? Make sure that, anything you're struggling with from a psychosocial standpoint, from a resource standpoint is managed. Again, yes. This is hospice. This is what we do. It's not about giving up. Nothing that I just said sounded like giving up, did it?
It sounded wonderful.
It sounds like the type of care that most people would want and choose for themselves or their loved ones to complete that life story. So how is that giving up?
Yeah, it sounds just like what everybody really wants.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when somebody decides, okay, it's time, let's try hospice, also knowing that every person is different. What does that look like? What does the day-to-day look like? And maybe we can talk about a couple different scenarios, because I know we can do hospice in home, we can do hospice in the hospital, we can do hospice in a nursing home, kind of anywhere, right?
Yeah, the first thing I'll talk about is the three general criteria that need to be met in order for hospice to be elected. Like we talked about earlier, there has to be a doctor, maybe two or more physicians, depending on how your advanced directives read, that certifies a terminal prognosis, meaning that based on a primary diagnosis and or comorbidities, the person, given the normal course of the disease process, which is, again, no one knows for sure, has 6 months or less to live. Now, having said that, if somebody outlives that initial prognosis, they don't have to come off of hospice. Hospice companies have to recertify them every so often based on the criteria we're given to make sure they're eligible. So I personally worked with a gentleman who was on service for almost 6 years continuously. Now, that's not normal, but that just shows that he met the criteria for hospice and to stay on hospice, but he far outlived his initial prognosis. Number two is you yourself, if you're your own decision maker, or your family or whoever your decision maker is, has to not want curative treatment at that point. So Medicare, which is typically the payer source, there's payer sources, private insurance, Medicaid, but Medicare is the primary payer source, is not going to pay for curative aggressive care and hospice care. So you have to be at a place, or you're responsible party, where we don't want to pursue curative aggressive treatment any further. And number three, the hospice company has to evaluate based on the criteria we're given, based on the diagnosis, and make sure there's eligibility. So even if the doctor says 6 months or less and you don't want any curative aggressive treatment, if we can't qualify you based on the criteria we're given, we can't admit you. So those are the three things that need to be in place. Beyond that, everything is truly individualized. We can work with people who are actively dying, which means they're unresponsive, they not eating, not drinking, and may have 24 hours or less to live. We can get in there and do some good work. We can work with individuals who have tried every type of aggressive treatment for their disease process and don't feel like there's any other options. And then we can work with individuals who have aggressive treatment options but don't want to be in the hospital. They don't want to feel like, bad. They don't want to feel bad. They don't want to, have a big part of their life spent not in the manner they want to. So they can pursue hospice even when there's aggressive curative treatment options available. And honestly, in my experience, the people who do that not only have better quality outcomes in their life, they tend to live longer because they feel better and the things that are important to them are being addressed.
Yeah.
So once we get involved and do the admission process, which involves some legal documents like everything else.
Oh, yeah.
We get equipment ordered, we get medications ordered, we might DC some medications, and again, this is all in collaboration with the patient, the family. The doctor is still in charge, either the person's primary care physician or the hospice company's medical director. Sometimes a combination of both, and we basically manage their care. We're not there every day necessarily. We're not there 24/7. That's another type of care that might be needed. But we're there as much as we need to be based on the individual's needs and the family's needs. And we want each person we're working with, each family, to live their life to the fullest. And we're going to support that through physical, emotional, and spiritual care.
Okay. Now you'd mentioned treatments and, going off some treatments. So I can imagine that not continuing something like chemotherapy would be in the mix, but when we're thinking about blood pressure medications, cholesterol medications, diabetes medications that are prolonging life in a lot of ways, are we staying on those? Are we taking those off? What kind of treatment stoppage are we looking at?
That's the gray area. Some people, when they make the decision for hospice, they don't want to be on any medications except comfort meds.
Yeah.
I don't want to take my insulin anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to take my heart medications. And we support that. Other people aren't quite ready for that. They feel like, I don't want my blood sugars to spike or whatnot. I still want to take my insulin, and they can do that. Now, if somebody who's on hospice for end-stage kidney disease wants to get a kidney transplant, that's considered a curative, aggressive type of care. So again, those gray areas, we individualize what we're able to do based on feedback from the patient, the family, the doctor, and our team.
But that same patient, would they still continue a regular dialysis, or is that, again, gray area?
Regular dialysis would be considered more curative.
Oh, okay.
Again, I don't want to get too far in the weeds,
depends on the person.
but if the doctor believes that a dialysis is truly for comfort and symptom management and quality of life based, there have been some rare exceptions in my career where somebody can do what's called palliative dialysis, which is very rare. But there are instances where even like a palliative chemo can be done, but these are the exceptions.
Sure.
Typically,
Gotcha.
chemo, dialysis, surgeries are considered aggressive, treatment-focused care and not going to be qualified under the hospice benefit.
Of course, I'm going to pick the toughest ones to explain, right?
But yeah, that's the good thing though is everything. This is not cookie cutter care. I wouldn't have done anything for almost 25 years in my life if it was cookie cutter. It's truly as unique as every individual, every family, and every situation, the care we provide.
I think the thing we keep finding in the aging world is there are so many choices, which is great.
Yeah.
So great. But there's a lot of choices.
Yes. And what we try to encourage family members to do, because oftentimes by the time the hospice decision is on the table, maybe the person herself doesn't have the capacity to make that decision. Not always, certainly, but often. And we encourage families to you don't have to make that decision for your loved one. Let's look at their advance directives. Let's look at their living will. Let's look at what they've put in writing at a different point in their life that they would want right now. And usually we encourage them to follow the advance directives.
Yeah, I love that.
A lot of what you're talking about sounds really similar to, we had a conversation last season with a death doula, and it sounds like this is sort of along the same lines. Do you ever work with death doulas or partner with them at all?
We have. I think as the death doula field grows, it'll become more of a collaboration.
Yeah.
There's not many out there still to this day. And at the start of my career, I didn't know what that was, quite honestly. I knew what a birth doula was, but it's the way I look at what we try to do is, in this culture, in this country, we celebrate birth. It's exciting when people say they're expecting. We celebrate it. We give baby showers. We do all kinds of things. We rally around each other when that baby is born into this world. To me, it's the same thing that should happen for death. It's a completion of the life cycle, regardless of your spiritual beliefs, whether there's, a heaven we're going to or nowhere or something in between. I want to celebrate a person's life story. And I think what death doulas and hospice can do in partnership is do that.
There was an article in the paper yesterday about a local person who had passed away, and the newspaper was stated that the obituary celebrated the way she lived more than the way she died. And I think that is, I just thought that was a really beautiful thing to think about was, all of this, and I think all of this show has been about how do we live better, and I think this is a great way to do that.
You know, for me, working in hospice for as long as I have has made me so much better personally and professionally. It's given me so many life lessons that I hopefully carry on in my own personal life and professional life. Make the most of each moment. Live life to the fullest. Don't sweat the small stuff. Tell the people you love and care about that you love and care about them. Don't push off what you can do tomorrow for the future, because unfortunately something could drastically change in all of our lives tomorrow. So, you know, I have friends who are like, how can you do this? Why have you done this? You know, isn't it depressing? And yes, it's been hard at times. Oh my goodness, I could share story after story about times I struggled in the field with my own, you know, thoughts and feelings about mortality and personalizing stuff. But at the end of the day, what an amazing thing to be able to do, to make a living, help support my family, and get to impact people on such a meaningful basis every day.
Yeah.
It's really, I feel very blessed.
So a lot of our listeners are caregivers themselves. So they're the ones that are like our age, just trying to make sure that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, uncle, those folks are taken care of well. So what should they know about how hospice might support them and not just their loved ones?
Hospice is just as much for the caregivers as we are the person who's on hospice, him or herself. We realize that being a caregiver is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week commitment, whether you're physically caring for somebody or you're just laying in bed at night worried about dad who's at the nursing home. So we put a lot of effort into really individualizing our care for the caregivers who are involved in every situation. Again, you know, we have a social worker, a master's level social worker typically, who's a part of the team, who's available to the family and the caregivers from, you know, anything from emotional needs to psychosocial resource management, can refer out to counseling if there's complicated grief. You know, we have a spiritual coordinator who can focus on the spiritual questions a family or caregiver might have about, why is this happening to my husband right now? He just retired a year ago. We were supposed to be traveling. You know, this isn't fair. I'm angry at God. So these are things that we can address. And most importantly, we remind the caregivers that they have to put themselves first in order to care for their loved one. If people ignore their own needs when they're trying to care for somebody who's on hospice, what we have is situations, which unfortunately I've seen, where the caregiver becomes ill, is taken out of the home or their caregiving environment, and sometimes dies before their loved one who was on hospice. And that's to me is the tragic scenario, is when somebody pushes themselves beyond their physical, emotional, and spiritual capabilities and becomes ill themselves. And that's one of the last things somebody on hospice would want for their loved one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody wants the caregiver, clearly one of the people in the world that loves them the most, to do so much that's the end. But yeah, those are hard stories.
The three things, ladies, that I have heard over the years that are most consistent with people who are on hospice. Most people who are consciously aware that they're dying have made some peace with it. Sometimes completely. They're ready to go. They're at peace with their life and their death, and they're worried about other things. Sometimes there's work to do, and that's okay. That's what we're here for. But the three things that people have shared with me that are most important to them, number one, is my family going to be okay? Is my wife going to be okay? My kids, my grandkids. That's what their focus is. So again, caring for the caregivers, the people in their lives who they love and care about, is a priority for us, not only for us, but for them as well. Number two, I'd like to be physically comfortable. I'd like to have my symptoms managed. I don't want to be in the hospital anymore. I don't want to feel pain or distress that I don't have to. And number three, has my life been meaningful and purposeful? Have I made a difference? Have I accomplished the things that I wanted to? Have I impacted people? And a lot of times life review and reflecting on the different chapters of someone's life story is really powerful work we can do.
I love that.
Wow, I think that's so profound. We're all so different, and life can feel so hard. But when you get down to it, everybody wants the same things at the end.
There are human experiences, Melody, that I think at the core of all of us we want. Maybe we don't use the same words. Maybe it's framed a little differently. But you know, again, we want meaning, we want purpose, we want peace, we want comfort, we want connection. You know, just those are things that the hospice philosophy of care tries to give to the individuals and the families that we work with.
Can you tell us a story about somebody? Of course, anonymous, but just give us one of your favorite stories that you pull out just to make people feel better about all of it.
I'm going to share two, if that's okay.
That's great.
Different types of stories that profoundly impacted me over the years. The first one was probably 5 or so years into my hospice career, again, working as a social worker in the field. I worked with a family that had the matriarch, the mother, the grandmother was on service. She was at a local nursing home. She had 5 children, 4 of whom were local, connected, supportive, connected with each other. And there was one son who lived in another state for reasons I never got to know, and that's okay. That he was estranged from the family. There clearly had been some falling out. This woman, when she first came on service and was lucid and able to communicate with me, said her literal dying wish was for her son, I think he was the baby in the family, to be connected with his siblings again. That's all that she wanted at that point in her life. And of course, I shared that with the family. One sibling was somewhat in touch with him, but still disconnected. And anyway, fast forward to her disease progressed. She entered what we call the active phase of the dying process, which again is unresponsive, no food, no fluid, kind of the fish out of water breathing. The vital signs are haywire. Basically, usually when somebody enters that state, it's imminent death up to maybe, depending on your body weight, 7 days at the most. Well, she was in that state for beyond 7 days, and she was not a large woman. And every physical sign that we took indicated that death should occur any moment. Well, 2 weeks went by.
Wow.
And finally, as the family was getting wore out trying to be at her side and we were managing her care, I just said, is there any possible way that one of you could reach out to your brother and just tell him what's going? They had said to me, he's not coming. He knows mom is in this state. He just won't do it. It's not going to happen. I said, try one more time. Let's see if it can happen. And I facilitated that. God's plan was for him to recognize what was going on. He got on a plane, flew to St. Louis, came straight to the nursing home, told his mom that he would do the best he could to connect again with his siblings for her. Literally minutes after he said that, she passed away.
Wow.
I tell you, moms, they are stubborn, but that is so beautiful.
And again, I kept in contact with the family for a time. I don't know how it turned out, but I know there was some effort being made. And I think there was a lot of stuff that had gone on previously, but they were making an effort to honor that wish. But that just shows how dying is not just physical. It's emotional and spiritual. And that's why we have to care for individuals who are dying on all 3 of those levels.
Yeah.
The other one, which is very personal to me, and I'll try to hold it together. This was just about 3 years ago. I worked with a younger woman in her 30s who had a great insurance career, lived in the Southwest Missouri area, was diagnosed with a rare form of ALS in her 30s. Again, long story short, and ended up going through a divorce, moved in to her parents' home in the St. Louis area, had a 6-year-old son. When mom's condition really took a turn, as we often see with ALS, she was very clear in her thinking, but basically couldn't do anything else. She essentially was a prisoner in her own body, but she had a adaptive device that could cause her or allow her to communicate a little bit. And her son got to a point where he didn't want to go near her anymore and just seemed scared. And that was so difficult for not only her, but for her parents to see. And when we got involved, we collaborated. I did some sessions with him and played with him and talked to him. And finally it became clear to me that not his mom, the machines that were around her were scaring him. This is a 6-year-old boy.
Oh,
Yeah.
So we talked to the doctor and the nurse to see if when he was able to be close to her, if we could get the machines out of the room, if that was going to be okay. And for certain periods of time it was. And so we did that, and he reconnected with his mom and sat on the bed with her. And from that point on, was able to not only be there for her and I think what she needed to let go eventually, but for her parents to see their grandson connect with mom in that last chapter of her life. It was just really powerful stuff. And my son, my youngest son, was 6 years old at the time. And I'll never forget going out in my car. And I had been already working in the field for 20 plus years and just crying my eyes out because I personalized it. Like, this could be me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it could be. And so that was a really powerful experience to see how just that subtle adjustment of what environment was around her allowed the son to get past his fear and reconnect with his mom.
That's wonderful. And just so many good stories about what can happen. And, you know, I know so many people reject hospice out of fear. What language do you use to try to bring that down for people?
I mean, you know, hospice is the word that I recommend using. I mean, sometimes if people say to us, "Oh, Dad just, he won't accept it if it's that word," then yes, we can talk about extra care and support. You know, we're never going to lie to somebody or mislead them or whatnot. We can use different language. I think what I said at the beginning of our time together is important, though. If we can talk about hospice about life and living rather than death and dying, to me, it frames it completely differently. Like, people equate the hospice word with death and dying, almost in an imminent way. It's not that at all. It's life and living. So if we can talk about all the care that I've mentioned earlier that we provide and how it's life-focused and quality of life focused and focused on everything about what we want in our lives, hopefully it feels differently for individuals and families having to make that decision.
Yeah.
I've never in my career talked to somebody who, after their loved one's death, thought, "We brought in hospice too early. Oh, I wish we would have waited." I could retire now if I wanted to, if I had $1 for every time a person said, "I wish we would have done this 6 months ago. I wish we would have done this a year ago. I wish Dad and our family would have known about this when he was going through all that misery, going through radiation and chemo and throwing up and being in the hospital half of last year." That's what I hear. And that's my message to people in the general public and in healthcare is hospice should be a care option and choice in line with any other treatment option. It shouldn't be put aside on the back burner until it is a last resort and the person has 48 hours to live. That's not the way hospice should be viewed in the healthcare community, and it shouldn't be what people in the general public think about hospice.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think this has been a really great way to reframe thinking about hospice, because I'm guilty of that. I think you've given us a lot of reasons to think very differently about it.
And I would encourage everyone, don't wait for your doctor, your medical professional to bring up hospice. Advocate for yourself, advocate for your loved ones, advocate for their advance directives, and initiate a conversation about hospice sooner than later. If a person doesn't qualify, they don't qualify.
Yeah.
If a person, you know, is in that gray area where they meet qualification and then 6 months later they've improved, they've gained weight, they've stabilized, then they're discharged. So you're not taking anything away from anyone by electing hospice. And keep in mind, by the way, you can still go to the hospital. You can still be treated for infections and different things. This is not doing anything when you need a certain level of care. It's just not focused on curative measures for the terminal prognosis. So you're going to get a high level of care while you're on hospice. You're going to get a registered nurse. You're going to get an oversight by a doctor or two. You're going to get a master's level social worker, a certified nurse's aide, a master's level spiritual counselor. You're going to get volunteers, music therapy, massage therapy, good quality care. So you're not giving up. You're not hastening anything. It's really an option that we should consider sooner rather than later.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of volunteers in hospice?
Yeah, they're an essential part of what we do. I mean, sometimes an individual who's at a nursing home might just need somebody to sit there and read to them or talk about the war they both served in or just, share, a craft together or whatnot. And that's what our volunteers do. A lot of our volunteers have had a hospice experience in their personal lives. Sometimes it's a nursing student who wants to be more familiar with healthcare and connect with individuals on hospice that way. I mean, I've worked with volunteers from their late teens to their hundreds. Wow. So anybody who's interested in volunteering for hospice, any hospice company would be happy to have your service. Absolutely.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So where can people go to learn more about hospice or connect with hospice services before that 48-hour, we have to do it sort of time period?
I mean, the Hospice Foundation of America is a good place to start just from an online search. They have a lot of resources, a lot of information out there about hospice in general. In St. Louis, we have something called the Greater St. Louis Hospice Organization. Many hospices are a part of that. I would not be hesitant to share what you're going through with others in your social network. Family, friends, church community, and get their experiences on hospice. I mean, most people, I would say, when they reach a certain age, have had some sort of personal experience on hospice. But honestly, contact me. I am so passionate about hospice. I'll never push hospice on somebody or a family when it's not the right time or situation, but I just love to educate and support people about the benefit, about what it really is and what it's not, and give information. So honestly, I don't have a problem sharing my email and contact information. Anybody can reach out to me just as a starting point to get some guidance about kind of where to go to navigate all this stuff.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes so we can get a hold of you. This has been an awesome conversation. I feel so much better about hospice, even having the experiences I've had, which have been generally positive. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I am extremely grateful that that Voice is willing to do this and to allow me to talk about something I'm so passionate about, both personally and professionally. And again, anything that I can do to be helpful moving forward, just let me know.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.